How people lived without technology in a deadly world. Imagine waking up and not knowing if you'll live to see the sunset. No walls around you, no medicine in your cabinet, no phone to call for help. Just cold air on your skin, darkness all around, and somewhere out there, something breathing, something watching, something hungry. Could you survive? Could anyone survive? 300,000 years ago, that was every single morning for every single human being alive. And yet, here you are, the descendant of those people, the product of an unbroken chain of survival, stretching back through ice ages, through drought, through catastrophe, all the way to this moment. But how? How did they do it? That's what we're going to find out today. And I promise you, it is more dramatic, more terrifying, and more awe-inspiring than anything Hollywood has ever put on a screen. Let's go back, way back, not to ancient Rome, not to the pyramids, further, much further. We're talking about a world where the climate swings between scorching heat and glacial cold within a single human lifetime. A world where the forests are alive with things that want to eat you. Where a cut on your hand can kill you in a week. Where a bad winter means your children starve. This is the Pleistocene epoch, roughly 2.5 million years ago, all the way to about 12,000 years ago. Humans lived through multiple ice ages during this time. Entire regions that are now green and lush were buried under miles of ice. The animals that shared the planet with early humans weren't the timid creatures we see today. These were giants, apex predators, creatures that looked at a human being and saw lunch. But let's make this real. Let's not talk about statistics and timelines. Let's talk about a family. Call him Kyle, a man, maybe 30 years old, though 30 in that world looked and felt like 60 does today. His body is lean and scarred. His hands are rough as bark. He has a mate, we'll call her Sura, and 2 children, a boy and a girl, barely old enough to walk without stumbling. They belong to a tribe of about 20 people, 20 human beings, surrounded by a world that is almost entirely hostile. This morning, Kale woke before dawn because something moved outside the cave. And in that world, when something moved outside the cave, you did not go back to sleep. Let's talk about where they lived, because the environment itself was the first enemy. The tribe moved with the seasons. No permanent home, no address. Every few weeks, sometimes sooner, they packed what little they had and moved on, following game, following water, fleeing danger. Their world was vast and merciless. In winter, temperatures could plunge to levels that killed exposed skin in minutes. In summer, the heat brought insects, disease, and animals driven mad by thirst. Water was one of the first killers most people never think about. Finding it wasn't always the problem. Knowing which water would kill you, that was the problem. A river that looks clean can carry parasites that destroy your insides in days. Early humans learned, through painful and often deadly trial and error, which sources were safe. They watched where animals drank. They noticed which plants grew near good water. They paid attention in a way that modern humans simply don't need to anymore. Food was the second battleground. Kyle's tribe did not wake up and choose what to eat. They woke up and fought for the right to eat anything at all. Gathering was the foundation. Roots, berries, nuts, insects, bird eggs, grubs pulled from rotting wood. It sounds unglamorous, but it kept them alive on the days when the hunt failed, which was most days. Because hunting in this world was not sport. It was not recreation. It was a desperate, dangerous gamble. Picture the scene. Dawn light filtering through ancient trees. Kyle crouches with 3 other men from the tribe, moving in absolute silence through tall grass. They've been tracking a wild horse for 2 hours. No rifles, no traps. Just wooden spears with sharpened stone tips, sweat-soaked hands, and pounding hearts. The horse is 50 feet away. It hasn't seen them yet. 30 feet, 20. And then a twig snaps, not under Cale's foot, but under the foot of the youngest hunter, barely 17, his first real hunt. The horse's head jerks up, its eyes go wide, and in an instant it explodes into motion, thundering away across the plain. The men stand there, breathing hard, watching dinner disappear over the horizon. That was a good day. No one was hurt, because the alternative, hunting larger prey, meant risking everything. The woolly mammoth, the woolly rhinoceros, the cave bear. These were not creatures you approached casually. A cave bear stood nearly 12 feet tall when it reared up. A single swipe of its paw could cave in a human skull. And yet early humans hunted them. Not out of bravado, out of necessity. A single large kill could feed the entire tribe for days. In the dead of winter, that single kill might be the difference between survival and extinction for everyone. The hunts that succeeded were masterworks of coordination, driving prey toward cliffs, surrounding animals in groups, screaming, waving fire, using the landscape as a weapon. Every strategy was bought with the blood of someone who tried the wrong approach first and didn't survive to try again. But predators didn't wait to be hunted. They came looking. This is the part of early human life that doesn't get talked about enough. The sheer, bone-deep terror of being prey. We have been the apex predator on this planet for so long that we've forgotten what it feels like to be hunted. Early humans hadn't forgotten. They lived it. In the cave lion, larger than any lion alive today, stalked the same landscapes early humans called home. Dire wolves hunted in packs, coordinated and relentless. Giant hyenas with jaws powerful enough to crush bone roamed in groups. And then there were the big cats, not just lions, but leopards, which had a particular preference for dragging prey into trees. Researchers have found early human bones in ancient trees, placed there by leopards exactly the way leopards store their kills today. Think about that for a moment. There are fossilized human bones that were carried into trees by leopards. Our ancestors were prey. Kyle knew this. Every member of the tribe knew this. You didn't wander alone. You didn't let the children out of sight. You didn't sleep without someone watching. Fire was not just warmth and cooking. Fire was a wall between your family and the dark. Animals feared fire in a way they feared nothing else. A well-maintained fire at the mouth of a cave was the difference between a tribe waking up in the morning and a tribe that simply didn't. The night Carl heard movement outside the cave, he sat up and fed the fire without making a sound. Across the darkness, he could see 2 points of amber light, eyes reflecting the firelight. Too low for a bear, too wide set for a wolf, a cave lion. It sat at the edge of the firelight for what must have felt like an eternity. Cale did not move. He did not breathe loud. He fed the fire, slowly, steadily, and eventually, those amber eyes disappeared back into the darkness. In the morning, they found tracks in the soft earth, and the lion had circled the cave entrance 3 times. It had been deciding. The environment itself, independent of any animal, could kill with breathtaking efficiency. A storm in the open meant hypothermia. A flash flood meant drowning. A summer drought meant no game, no water, no hope. A volcanic eruption, and this region saw several, could blanket hundreds of miles in ash, destroying vegetation, choking water sources, and sending animals fleeing for their lives, with humans scrambling desperately behind. 70,000 years ago, the Toba supervolcanic eruption in what is now Indonesia came within a razor's edge of driving humanity extinct. The genetic evidence suggests the total human population may have dropped to as few as 10,000 individuals. Some researchers believe it may have been even fewer. Essentially, the entire species squeezed through a bottleneck so narrow that all humans alive today are more closely related to each other than chimpanzees from the same forest. We nearly didn't make it. Not because of war, not because of a plague, because a mountain exploded, and those few thousand survivors, cold, starving, terrified, living in a world darkened by volcanic winter, kept going, kept building fires, kept hunting, kept having children, kept teaching those children everything they knew. Because knowledge was survival. This is where the human story gets extraordinary. Kale's tribe had something no other animal on Earth had in quite the same way. They had accumulated knowledge, passed down through generations, refined and expanded with each one. Somewhere in the tribe's history, someone had discovered that certain rocks, they struck together at the right angle, produced a spark. That spark, if coaxed carefully into dry moss, became a flame. That flame could be fed and grown and maintained, or it could be carried in a slow-burning bundle to the next campsite. Fire changed everything. Not just warmth, not just protection. Fire allowed early humans to cook food, and cooked food is more calorie-dense and safer than raw food. Some researchers believe that cooking is actually what allowed the human brain to grow so large. The energy that would have gone into digesting raw food was freed up to fuel a bigger, more complex brain. We literally think better because our ancestors learned to cook. But fire was difficult. Starting a fire from scratch required friction. 2 pieces of wood worked together until the heat of friction ignited the dry powder left behind. It took skill. It took patience. It took strong arms and steady nerves. And in wet conditions, in cold conditions, when your hands were shaking and your family was freezing, it could take everything you had. Weapons followed their own brutal evolution. The earliest tools were simply rocks, sharp-edged flakes, knocked off larger stones by striking them together. Over hundreds of thousands of years, these became more refined. Hand axes, scrapers, points. Eventually, early humans learned to attach these stone points to wooden shafts, first with strips of animal hide, later with pine resin and sinew. The spear was born. Then came the spear thrower, a simple device that effectively extended the length of a hunter's arm, dramatically increasing the velocity of a thrown spear. Or where a strong man could throw a spear perhaps 60 feet with any accuracy, a spear thrower doubled that range. And distance from a charging mammoth was the difference between life and death measured in inches. The bow and arrow came later, perhaps 40 or 50,000 years ago in some regions. It was a revolution, silent, fast, effective at ranges that kept the hunter genuinely safe for the first time in history. But every one of these innovations cost something. The first person to figure out that you could make fire came from the ashes of 1,000 failed attempts. The first hunter to try a new technique on a dangerous animal often didn't come home to report the results. Progress was written in blood. Which brings us to what may be the most important survival tool early humans possessed. Each other, and Kyle's tribe of 20 people was not an accident of proximity. It was a carefully balanced social machine, running on rules and relationships that had been refined over millennia. The strongest hunters led the hunts. The most experienced elders held the knowledge, where the good hunting grounds were, which plants were poisonous, how to read weather signs, what the behavior of certain animals meant. The women of the tribe did not sit passively. They gathered the majority of the tribe's daily calories, organized child care cooperatively, processed hides, maintained the fire, and carried the community's social fabric together. Every person had a role. Every role was essential. When someone was injured, and someone was always injured, the tribe carried them, literally and figuratively. Archaeological evidence shows us healed bones that would have been completely debilitating injuries. A femur broken and healed, a skull fractured and survived. These people didn't survive alone. Someone brought them food while they recovered. Someone protected them. Someone cared. We know from the skeletal record that some individuals in early human groups lived to relatively advanced ages despite severe physical disabilities. A person who couldn't hunt or gather was still fed, still valued, still part of the tribe. Humanity, it turns out, is not a recent invention, but tribes also meant conflict. Resources were finite. Territory mattered enormously. A river valley with good fishing and reliable game might support one tribe comfortably, but two tribes in desperate competition. And when two groups with competing needs met at the same water source or the same hunting ground, the result was not always peaceful. Warfare is ancient, not modern, not civilized, ancient. Archaeological sites contain the evidence, skulls with fractures that match the shape of stone weapons, bodies buried with spear points lodged in bone. The marks of violence that ended lives tens of thousands of years before the first city was ever built. But conflict also drove innovation. The tribes that developed better cooperation, better communication, better weapons, better strategies, those tribes survived. The others became memory, their DNA lost to time. Competition with other humans was, perversely, one of the engines of human advancement. There was a night when a rival tribe came close to Kyle's camp. Too close. They were larger, perhaps 30 strong. The fires were high on both sides that night. No one slept. Children were held in silence. The older hunters sat at the front, weapons in hand, watching. By morning, the other tribe had moved on. But for 3 days after, the tribe packed up and moved in the other direction. Survival sometimes meant not fighting. Knowing when to run was as important as knowing when to stand. And through all of it, through the cold and the hunger and the fear and the blood, the human spirit found room for something beyond survival. They buried their dead with flowers and ochre. They painted the walls of caves with images of animals and human figures and abstract patterns. Art made 30, 40,000 years ago that still takes your breath away today. They made music. Ancient bone flutes have been found, more than 40,000 years old. They told stories around fires that burned all night. Imagine that fire. Imagine the faces gathered around it, lined with scars, dark with cold, illuminated by the flickering light. And someone begins to speak, not about tactics or hunting grounds. They begin to describe the stars. They begin to explain where the tribe came from, what the world means, what happens when someone dies. That impulse to make meaning in the darkness, that is as old as humanity itself. It is perhaps what makes us human. When Kale grew old, if he grew old, he would have become the thing his tribe valued most of all, a repository. The knowledge he carried in his head could not be written down. There were no books, no scrolls, no recordings. The only vessel for 40 years of accumulated survival knowledge was a living human being. The tribe protected its elders not merely out of sentiment, but out of necessity. An elder dying was a library burning. Everything they knew about the local terrain, the seasonal migrations, the medicinal plants, the old hunting strategies, gone, unless it had been successfully passed on. And so every night around the fire, the elders talked, and the young listened, and the knowledge traveled forward through time the only way it could, from one human mind to another, across generations, across thousands of years, all the way to us. We think of ourselves as separated from those people by an enormous gulf of technology and civilization. And in terms of the world we inhabit, we are. But in terms of who we are, biologically, neurologically, emotionally, we are those people. The anxiety you feel in uncertain situations, that's a survival mechanism that kept your ancestors alive on a plain full of predators. The deep comfort you feel around fire, around a gathering of people you trust, around shared food. That's ancient. That's Kael's tribe, written into your nervous system across 300,000 years. The resilience that surfaces in you when things get truly difficult, when everything falls apart, and somehow you find another gear, another reserve, another reason to keep going. That didn't come from nowhere. That was earned, paid for, passed down to you through an unbroken line of human beings who refused to stop. Every ice age survived. Every catastrophe endured. Every predator outrun or outthought or outfought. Every child born into a dangerous world and somehow raised to adulthood. All of it accumulating, refining, selecting for the qualities you carry right now. Somewhere in the ancient record, there is a handprint on a cave wall, a human hand pressed into red ochre and then pressed against stone. A mark that says, I was here, I existed, I survived. It was made by someone who never knew their name would be forgotten, who had no concept of history or legacy, who simply wanted, in some wordless and profound way, to leave a mark. And 40,000 years later, we can still see it. Imagine living every single day, with death waiting behind every tree. Imagine facing the cold, the dark, the hunger, the fear, not occasionally, not in crisis, but every single morning as the simple baseline of existence. And somehow, against every odd, in the face of everything the world threw at them, they survived. Which means, so did you.